Hello and welcome to today's webinar, where today, of course, we are talking about how to find deals, how to use and use PD rights for opportunities. There's kind of a huge wealth of opportunity out there now in terms of these buildings to convert from commercial use into residential use. And of course, with all these PD rights, this kind of nice, easy planning route through that, we thought today it would be really great to have a look at how we find them and how we assess them. And of course, to help me through that challenge of trying to answer that question, I have, of course, none other than Mr. Lloyd Girardi. Hey, Lloyd, how you doing?
Morning, Paul. I'm good. In fact, it's not the morning now, is it?
Afternoon now, yeah, crikey. Well, welcome. So for those that you don't know Lloyd, I'll spit my words out now. Lloyd's an investor developer. He set up a training company to help people do the stuff that he and his partner Andy have been doing. He's an author and obviously a mentor for the people that need help with this sort of stuff too. So welcome, Lloyd. Great to have you. I suppose first off, just to get to know you a little bit, perhaps can I ask you, why did you set up Whitebox in the first place? Kind of what was the motivation around all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, excuse the scruffs. I've just come back from holiday, so I've just nipped into the office. But no, the reason we started Whitebox is to help people become property developers. Myself and Andy, when we first started back in 2014, we weren't aware of any sort of development specific training. There's obviously courses out there for development single lets, HMOs, service accommodation. But specific developments, there wasn't anything that we could see, and we needed the help at the time. So for us, we went through all the pain and challenges of developing and learn lessons along the way. And now what we do is actually teach people how to get started themselves, and more importantly, how not to do things sometimes, because we made a few mistakes and we don't want people doing that same thing. So yeah, we started in sort of 2014 teaching people, and it's something that we are very, very passionate about. And yeah, thank you for jumping on here and listening to me today.
Absolutely. I suppose kind of today is all about kind of commercial conversions and stuff. So what's the kind of motivation for you around kind of why commercial conversions? Why is that kind of interesting for you?
Yeah, I think what we're going to go through today, and if you're familiar with commercial conversions, you'll understand that in terms of planning, it's a lot easier to do a commercial conversion under planning rules. We specialize in new build and commercial conversions. New build, you have to have full planning permission to be able to do a new build. And commercial conversions, there are permitted development rights, which we'll highlight a couple today, of transforming an old building and renovating it into something new as well. And that's something, I'm quite a creative person, so to see an old building be redeveloped into something new is something I'm really passionate as well about.
Sort of bringing life back into those old buildings.
Absolutely.
Quite a cool thing. Right, well, let's jump into it. Let's jump into the content. So poor old Lloyd has had a brief from me, which was, those kind of first two parts of this course that kind of usually take about 3 hours to go through. Could you kind of do that in about 20 minutes? So we've got kind of quite a big challenge today. So we're going to sort of try and get Lloyd to take us through the sort of the headlines around all this, if we could.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just before we start as well, I want to gauge what the people listening have done or where they are in the journey, if that's all right. So I think if you've done a commercial conversion before, either that's a small flip of a house or a bigger unit and converting a few, just put a number 1 in the chat room for me. If you can just sort of, brilliant. If you've never ever done any commercial conversions before, you're intrigued about it, just put number 2 in there for me, just so I can see kind of where people are at. So there's a mix of 1 and 2s, mainly 2s, which is great. This is what this webinar is about, just to help you understand what the possibilities are.
Sure. Amazing.
Brilliant. Okay. Is it okay for me to share screen now then, Paul?
Yeah, please, let's jump in. Let's crack on. Let's get this show on the road, shall we?
Yeah, let's share my screen. So you should be able to see the slides there. Superb. So yeah, this is Paul sort of said, let's talk about commercial conversions. Let's go through part of we do a commercial conversion accelerator, which is kind of these slides are partly from that. So I've taken sort of the highlights out, and then what I'm going to talk about is a bit more about the new permitted development rights which have come out, and 2 specific ones. One you've probably heard of, and one not a lot of people talk about, which I actually really fascinated by this last one I'll talk about as well, which I won't give too much away right now. But the idea of commercial conversions is that you can take a building, an old building or something that's not in use or in use, and convert it into something sort of more residential. And that's what we're really talking about, is converting something into residential use. And we're most property investors, especially sort of the likes of us, we like to convert into residential use rather than commercial. So this is mainly taking an old building into sort of residential use. And there are some big opportunities coming this year, big opportunities. And that's because of last year, really, that the whole COVID situation changed the face of developments, and I think for the better. So yes, the COVID wasn't great, the whole pandemic wasn't great in the big picture, but in terms of the development world, Boris has helped us out a bit. And I'm sure you would have heard about the build last year, and the announcement of what Boris wanted. In fact, during COVID, the actual construction industry never shut. They never exactly shut down building houses. The only reason why sites closed is because they couldn't get the materials, because obviously build materials or build merchants had to close down. They couldn't get the supply. So yeah, a few sites did slow down, but it never actually was told to stop. And that's because the UK know that we need to be developing and building houses constantly, pandemic or no pandemic. And that's what I love about this industry, is that houses there'll always be a need for it. So what the build kind of process was, or the white paper announced, is that it's there to deliver some new jobs in the aftermath of COVID and what happened. Build back better, and so that's kind of building new houses more and building in a better way as well. But also the government announced they were doing a £5 billion government investment to help build houses and help the infrastructure, not just build, but conversions as well. So the future is changing, and there are a few things that have happened and I've already seen since sort of the beginning of this year. And it's taken its time, it's slowly, but people are catching on to it quickly. So you are still in the listening to this, you are still in the stage where people aren't quite familiar with it yet, but once they are, just like the office to residential conversions, when people know that it's actually really quite easy and simple to do, they jump onto it, and then the market gets flooded. But at the moment, people aren't aware of it yet. So the future's changing. What I mean by that is, do we need offices anymore? Do businesses need offices anymore? And obviously, from working from home last year, there's a lot of people that realize that they don't need the office, that the business can still continue. I think a lot of people, for us, we like the morale in the office, so we're still gonna have the office. We like the sort of talking and being next to each other as well. But a lot of businesses have realized actually that the overhead of an office is not needed, so they can save money and they can work from home as well. So that means the office will become vacant and potentially up for sale, and there's things you can do with that as well. The really interesting twist this year is the high street. And the high streets used to be protected, as you know, Paul. They used to be protected, and they used to be kind of, you couldn't convert, and the permitted development wasn't done on the high streets. But that is changing, and that has changed already. And the biggest question as well is, will the UK ever meet their residential dwelling target? And that's 300,000 houses a year, which they won't. They haven't done for a long time. And until we change the way we build, I don't think they're going to do that either. So changing the way we build is building modular, building quicker, having the availability of funds quicker. That needs to be, and the other one is planning quicker. That's the hurdle that a lot of people hate. But I think if we can change that, the UK can meet its target by allowing people to build quicker. And I think one of the ways that we can build quicker is permitted development. So planning is quicker when you've got permitted development, which I'll come on to in a moment. But I'm going to talk about the high streets quickly, because even the big names, so Mary Portas, the queen of shops, as they call her, she's saying that the high street is changing. So don't sort of don't dismiss the high street, change it, do something different, make something different. And I think her interpretation probably is actually change the way shops sell. My interpretation is get rid of the shops and put some houses there. But everyone is talking about the high street changing, and if you walk down the high street, there's so many vacant properties. There's unfortunately people like the small independent shops that are struggling, and actually you could be a lifeline to help them by buying the property off them, and maybe paying a little bit more because you know that actually a commercial rate isn't great, but you know that the potential to convert to residential, you could offer them a bit more and maybe help them in that sense as well. There's so many shops that have gone the wrong way. Debenhams got taken over by Boohoo. Miss Selfridge, Top Man, Top Shop, ASOS bought their clothes, bought their stock, but not their properties. So obviously ASOS is an online fashion retailer. They're huge now, but they don't want the asset of a shop because they know it's not of any use. So you'll see, like I walked down our high street a few months ago. I did a video on YouTube, and we walked down it and actually show you some opportunities. And I think it was Peacocks was in there. That's vacant and empty, and it's going to stay like that for a long time because it's a big unit. But unless you can change the way people live on the high street as well, that shop is going to stay empty. And unfortunately, last year there was a lot more big names that went into administration. So Peacocks is on there, Bon Marché, Arcadia Group. Like some of these have been bought out and they still are sort of running under the same name, but they all went sort of into administration or very close to. Okay, so there are going to be big units up for sale. There are going to be, and we've seen it already. We've seen sort of big retail units going for sale already. But this obviously starts at the top and feeds down to the independents. And I think, unfortunately, the independents will suffer. But again, you can be the lifeline to sort of help that through. I think just to show you the commercial conversions we've done before I sort of talk about a couple of the permitted development rights that are available to you guys. And what I mean by that is I'll explain that in a moment. But we took an old, it's actually grade 2 listed. So actually permitted development wasn't applicable in here because of the grade 2 listed, but it was an office and we converted it into a HMO. So we actually got full planning permission for this to convert. If we didn't have full planning permission, we could have had, if it wasn't grade 2 listed, sorry, we could have gone from an office to a residential dwelling to a HMO, okay, under permitted development. So there's a step-by-step process of going. You can't go from office to HMO. There's got to be that step in between. You've got to go from from office to dwelling to HMO. But we've done this one. This is complete. It's been rented out for a good 5-6 years now, but really good rental income from it. What it is, it's just the ground floor of that building, you can see. So just the ground floor of the building, but we got a flat out of it, and we also got a 5-bed HMO of it, and it's pretty decent. This is the internals, this is the externals of the building, and the Crystal Palace is the other one we've done as well. So that's an old pub, and we converted that from an old pub which was derelict and disused into a 12-bed HMO, and it's more service accommodation that was rather than the HMO. So we got some good rates in there, but again, it's a commercial conversion. This is something we've taken an existing building, and they used to call it the fire engine, as you can see by the picture. It was a horrible looking building. Internal was even worse than the external, but we converted it. We changed it into some really nice living accommodation, and yeah, it was more service accommodation in the area as well. Washington pub, exactly the same, an old pub. We converted it into a 31-bed HMO kind of style service accommodation unit as well. So again, really, really good. And this is the conversion of it. Again, great sort of images in there, great accommodation. And again, this is something we've done, converting buildings, and we love them. We love converting the old buildings. And if I go back on there, you can see rundown pub, converting it into a nice sort of looking building. And if you notice, this is in the same town as the other one. And even the style and the finish of the building, we kept that sort of white, black and white feel, because that was the brand that we had as well. So we wanted to sort of keep the branding the same and these were service accommodation units, so it stood out in the area to what we do and how we do things as well. Lawson Street, this is one we completed and have sold. The conversion was actually in fact, we could have done permitted development because it was an old solicitor's office. But what we actually went for is an extra 6 units at the back. So we ended up going for full planning permission. And if you can see the picture in the top right, that's the back of the old solicitor's office, which used to be 5 terrace houses. And then the picture on the bottom right is the back again, and we've extended it back out. So we managed to get an extra 6 flats in what would have been the sort of courtyard garden area of those old houses. So we actually got full planning on this. So that was worth 1.6 million. We purchased it for £108,000, and profit on that is about £330,000. So bigger spend than we anticipated, but again, £330,000 is a life-changing sum of money for a lot of people as well. And that sold in the middle of last year. So about this time last year, we sold that in a pandemic. Okay, so even if things are happening around you, people still need to buy. There's still opportunities out there to sell, because I know that's what stops a lot of people getting started as well, is they talk themselves out the back end because they don't know if they're going to sell or they can refinance or so on and so on. And then final, Mill Road is one we're working on currently. And this is quite an interesting project as well. So bought for 820,000, end value is 3.6 million. And this is an old commercial shoe factory. So kind of a warehouse style, industrial style unit. And we're building this into 24 apartments. Interestingly enough, this is actually a couple of people we taught, they found this project and we've joint ventured with them on this project. So we don't just teach and forget about it and say, right, go away. Thanks for the business. We actually go back and say, actually, if you find something, we'll joint venture with you. We're more than happy to sort of look at it. If it works for us, we'll help you with the funding. We'll help you with the experience. And there's new first-time developers. People need that. Okay, and that's something different about the way we teach and who we are. Like White Box, as a business, our values are about sort of being personal, friendly, and being honest as well. So training has a bad name, unfortunately, because there are people out there that just try and train because they think it's going to help them with a load of money. We actually do it for personal reasons, that we like to get back involved with people doing deals as well. And yeah, if we can help you guys get off the ladder, great. That's what we needed back in 2014. And that's why we sort of set up the training business as well, to help people start. And obviously this building here is something we've done with 2 people that we taught. Yeah, expected profit on this about 660, and then completing about the middle of next year, sort of, we think about March, April time next year, which is in the middle of a conversion as well, which is really, really good. I know a few people on here have seen that as well, which is awesome. Okay, so that's kind of what we've done. I'm going to talk to you briefly about finding deals, but I know what we're going to do is actually show you using Nimbus how to find those deals specifically. So this is only a recap and kind of going through briefly of what you can do. Later on, we'll show you how to find deals specific to the permitted development rights I'm going to show you as well. So that'll become a lot clearer in a moment. So the ways to find deals is websites, obviously Rightmove, Zoopla, those kind of websites. There's plenty of commercial deals on there. You want to talk to commercial agents. Residential agents, not as much, because we're talking commercial conversions, but the odd time the residential agents will have a lead or know someone that's got something. So 90% of the time speak to a commercial agent, 10% of the time just check up on the residential agents and see if they've got anything as well. One of the biggest ways to find deals though is talk to people, and just ask, put something out there, ask any opportunities available, especially word of mouth in terms of networking. If you can go to business network events, are there any businesses that are struggling? Are there anyone or is there anyone that needs to sell their office? That kind of thing as well. So just talk to people about what the opportunities are and can you help someone out? And I think business networking for commercial units is a big thing as well. Also for investment purposes as well, it's a good thing to do. Drive around, cycle, walk the dog, keep an eye out, look around your local area to see what is available. And one of the things, in fact, I'd recommend, if you haven't already, jump onto our YouTube channel to look and find the video of me and Andy walking down our high street. And we just point out opportunities for you and how to find them, how to spot for them. So that's probably an action point to do after this webinar as well. But you've got Google Maps, Street View, and Nimbus Maps. We use Nimbus Maps pretty much every day to try and find deals. We're going to show you specifically how to find those deals using Nimbus. And yeah, obviously you guys are on here. Most of you probably have Nimbus. If you haven't, I'd highly recommend getting it because it's really, really good way of finding deals. And what I love about you guys and Paul is you are on the ball on ways to find deals and making things simpler, which is why I think we've got a good synergy with Nimbus, because we try and teach people how to become developers in a simple way and help you get into it easily. And obviously Nimbus try and help you find deals easily as well. So other ways, auctions and deal sources, and there's plenty of sort of sites out there, but they're great ways to find deals. But we'll go into the Nimbus Maps one specifically later on.
Sure.
Okay, so any questions so far, Paul, on there?
No, looking good. Yeah, looking really good. Really good. Love it.
Awesome. So let's look at the kind of permitted development rights and sort of talk about that. So just quickly, what is permitted development? So the UK are bound by laws, and the UK have a Town and Country Planning Act. Within that, there is the General Permitted Development Order. Okay, so permitted development is not an immunity from planning control, but a planning permission in its own right. Okay, and that is basically granted by this development order. So the GPDO, they call it. Okay, General Permitted Development Order. It is a permission in itself. And basically you have the permission to do something. So in this case, we're going to look at is change of use. So what change of use is you are using an office building, for example, and you can change that into residential. Okay, change of use. You're using it for a different purpose. Now, not all buildings can go from a commercial building to residential. There are restrictions to do that, but you could look at it as loopholes, but actually they're legal loopholes. They're legally, they're right in front of you as well if you understand it. Again, I know this is unclear to see. I've got another slide which goes into detail, but what I can do is I'll share this file on here so you can download it from here if you like. But it just tells you what the use class kind of was and what the use class is now being, because you need to know what it is now, because permitted development follows the use class. Okay. So let me just sort of zoom into up here. And again, if you can't see it, I'll put a link to this in the webinar so you can download that as well. So let's take a shop as an example. So a shop, you can see here, the old use class was A1. Okay, and A1 is basically your high street shop. The category that would fall under is what they call A1. Okay, and I'm trying to teach this in a layman's terms, an easy way to understand. Your house you live in is classed as a C3. So houses are C3 dwelling houses. A shop, commercial use, residential, retail, A1. That's now been classed under what they call Class E. Okay, so a lot of these classes have been condensed into what they call Class E. Okay, and that's kind of seeing where you are here. So all of these here, so you've got shops, supermarkets, post office, travel agents, sandwich bars, hairdressers, funeral directors, retail warehouses, domestic hire shops, dry cleaners, all that list there. Estate agents, restaurants, cafes, banks is a big one as well, going into Class E. So just picture your high street and how many of those are on your high street. Okay, going into Class E. If we go further down the list as well, you can see some other ones in here, but I think gyms, Class E, doctors, clinics, health cares, day nurseries, day centres, all being sort of changed into Class E. And this is what you want to look at. Class E is the big part here. Okay. Anything you want to add to that on there, Paul?
Just there's a comment in the chat about vets, actually, which I think come under the old D1 use. So I think the vets has kind of come in the chat saying, are vets under the new Class E use or not? And I believe they are, because they come under the kind of doctors, clinics, health centres, that kind of stuff. So I think the answer to that in the chat is yes. I think they're Class E.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll get into Class E, which is great because it's great finding and seeing these walking down the high street. There are criteria to it as well. So I want to do it step by step. But this is where, if you're new to developments, this is where a lot of people get confused. And planning is a complex thing. Okay, so we have use classes, which is A1, which is now Class E. And then we have the permitted development rights, which is actually known as Class MA. So they still use the same word class, which is confusing, I think.
Yeah.
So basically, you can take these Class E properties, so your shops, your banks, your building societies, restaurants, cafes, and using Class MA, which actually I like to call it Class Magic. You can find out. I've copywritten that. I haven't actually. As I was doing the slides today, I was like, oh, this is perfect. It spells magic because it is. And this is why, because you can basically take any Class E, or most Class E, I shouldn't say any actually, but most Class E properties and convert them to residential using permitted development. Okay, and what that is a 56-day notification to convert from one use to another using Class MA, okay, or Class Magic. So you don't need to go through full planning permission. Okay, that's the big thing. A lot of people think they have to go through full planning to get the residential use. What you can't do is you can't go into residential and then into HMO. Okay, there's restrictions on that. But this is going from Class E to residential. So that means you could take a shop and turn it into a few residential units, a few flats, okay, using permitted development. Now, there used to be no restrictions on the size you could convert to. Now you have to convert to the minimum size standards. Okay, so there's a few changes. Like there's been a lot of changes this year, but I think for the better.
Totally.
Okay, so let's look at this list again. Imagine your high street. Imagine walking down your high street or anywhere, if you've been shopping recently. Did you see any shops that are vacant? Have you seen any post office vacant? Travel agencies vacant? Sandwich bar, anything like this? Have you seen it vacant? I've done a few TikTok videos. We're getting trendy. I've done a few TikTok videos showing you a few in our local area, like this building you can convert using Class MA. Okay, so you can take any of those that you see a Class E next to, and you can convert them into using Class MA. You can convert them into residential units. Okay, so there's a few there, and that is the likes of these high street sort of shops. And this is taken from the YouTube video. So behind Andy on the right, that is a big bank, and like not yet, but I do believe banks will not need to be on the high street. I think it's going to go all internet banking. Estate agencies in 5-10 years, I don't think they're going to be on the high street either, because everyone's going to go online. And unfortunately, the high streets won't be what they used to be. And I do say unfortunate because I quite like walking down the street, going into shops, and especially Christmas time. Yeah, you got that whole Christmas buzz. But yeah, unfortunately, things they're not going to be the same. So we have to adapt now and jump on it while they're on top. Okay.
Totally.
So that's the basics of Class MA. Okay, and you can go into the complex details of it, but the basics is if you take a unit that's a Class E, you can convert that into residential. This next one is one that I love, and not a lot of people talk about it. Class ZA, or the unspoken miracle.
You're like, okay. ZA, how can I make that into a word? I'll make it into 3.
Yeah. But I've looked at a lot of webinars recently, a lot of people talking, and they've all jumped onto Class MA because it is great. And if you can understand it and you can sort of find buildings using it, it's great. And obviously, Paul's going to show you how to find those units in a moment. Class ZA is a new beast. And I think a lot of people aren't talking about it because it probably is the next step up after MA. Okay, so looking at this again, what this means, ZA is the demolition of buildings and construction of new dwellings in the same place. So you can actually knock a building down and rebuild with permitted development. That's unheard of. Okay, every new build previously has to have full planning permission, but this one is telling you can knock down an old building and rebuild something, and it gets better. It gets better than just rebuilding it, because anyone could just rebuild it. There's restrictions to it. So we're looking at older buildings. So buildings constructed prior to 1989, but they must be in use as a sort of commercial building before, I think it was March 2020. So it has to be within a commercial use still. You can take residential blocks of flats as well. So that's a different thing, but just quickly, it has to be a building that has been constructed before 1989. Commercial buildings and residential purpose, also residential purpose-built blocks of flats is great. The size, the actual footprint, you can't do it to buildings bigger than 1,000 square meters, which is huge, by the way. That's big. Okay, there's plenty of properties out there. I can show you sort of quickly how to look at that on Nimbus as well. Now, they must be vacant, and they must have been vacant for at least 6 months prior to submission. So you can't just take a building that's in use and knock it down and rebuild it. They have to be derelict and vacant. Okay, and they have to be 6 months, at least 6 months before you submit the PD application. The height, this is the bit that is the best bit. You could take a 3-story building or a 2-story building, and you can add another 7 meters on top of the original height. You can go up to a maximum of 18 meters. That's 6 stories. Okay, and the basement is also permitted, so you could potentially have 7 stories because the height can't exceed 18 meters. That includes any phone masts and anything at the top of the building. That's the best bit. You can take a 2-story, 3-story building and convert it into a 6-story. Okay, most people would add 2 stories onto the dwelling. So if you took a 3-story dwelling, you could have a 5-story dwelling, new build as well, because you can knock down and rebuild. Now, planning fees is massive if you're doing blocks of flats like that, because you have to pay for every individual flat. Whereas this, you can knock down a building and rebuild in its place. Okay, it must be in the same footprint. Okay, there are some restrictions on it. So it must be in the same footprint as the existing building, but height-wise, you can go higher. Okay, and that's the magical part. And I've got the slide in twice. That's why it's so good. But yeah, I think that the theory is great. I think what we can do is jump onto Nimbus, show you a few ways to find deals using these. So it'll become a lot clearer actually kind of what the buildings are and that kind of thing. And I've got an example of one in Northampton, which I'll show in a moment. But I know Paul's got some great ways to find MA or Class MA units, and then we'll look at Class ZA in a moment. Yeah,
sure. So this is something, Lloyd, that we've kind of started here, which everybody loves apart from me. And this is the how to find a deal in 90 seconds with Nimbus in effect. So, and the problem is I've got to go and do this now. So this is the sort of the key thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a deal in 90 seconds. That's why my kind of heart's racing and why I'm suddenly talking faster than I usually do, because the blood is suddenly pumping, and I'm going to hope I can do this justice. And then what we're going to do is once we've found a deal, once we've found some sites, I'm going to talk through why they're deals, and we're going to sort of try and do a bit of a story around that particular building, those particular owners, and try to bring the whole thing to life in effect if we can. So what I would like to do, this is my version of Nimbus, and this now becomes my sort of child's kind of magician's kind of trick in effect. So what I'd like to do is I'd like you to open up the chat. And if you've got a location you'd like me to go and search for a Class MA property on, we'll then go and do a deal in 90 seconds. So, and we get Lloyd to pick the location out of the chat. Lloyd, where would you like us to go?
The first one that came to that I looked at. In fact, no, I'm not going to do it because it's near us, and I feel that people would think I'm picking it. Let's go for Bexley. Bexley, right, cool. Do you know where Bexley is? I have no idea. I believe it's in southeast London.
Southeast London, looking pretty good. Yeah, looking pretty good. There we go. Yeah. So let's just kind of get our. So before the clock starts, I always get this kind of when does the clock start, Paul? What I want to do first, we're going to understand Bexley first, in effect. So I'm just going to clear this search. We can sort of look at. In fact, no, I'm going to leave that. Let's leave that for a second, right? So what we're going to do is this is sort of Bexley in terms of where Google thinks Bexley is, in effect. That's what a little kind of spot says. That's kind of the center of our search area. First thing I want to do is I want to kind of get a feel for what Bexley looks like. So I'm going to plot onto the map here average sales prices. So I want to kind of understand, am I prime London? Am I outskirts of London? Am I kind of the prime part of London? Kind of what does it look like, frankly? So what I can see here is these sort of little white boundaries. Those little white boundaries show us neighborhoods, and they then show us the average sales prices across those areas in effect. So what we can see is we're not in a bad part of London. It's £400 a foot around here. There's a little kind of patch up here that's a bit weaker, sort of dips down sort of 10% down from sort of the 420 down to 380 over here. So I kind of want to stay away from this little patch, but around here we've got sort of 450 a foot, 400, 420, 450. So kind of probably the areas I want to kind of search actually around sort of these areas, aren't they, really? Sort of looking around sort of Bexley Station, that sort of stuff would be kind of perhaps an interesting place to start, in effect. So that's my first thing. A lot of the stuff that Lloyd's talked about has been about HMOs. So kind of the next thing I want to say is there an HMO marketplace? So not a huge amount of HMOs, quite frankly, when you sort of look across Bexley compared with the neighbouring areas. So probably looking then for sort of more commercial conversions into the residential use, rather than trying to then be sort of clever and move that onto a sort of HMO use afterwards. So let's go and find. We've sort of found some areas we want to go and search. So I'm going to search around here, and this is then where the clock starts. So I'm going to use this thing called Elite Plus. So I'm going to use the Class MA strategy. So Lloyd, can you do me a favor? Can you be ready with the stopwatch, and we'll go 3, 2, 1, go. So this is now plotting across the map some Class MA opportunities, and those Class MA opportunities are showing me across with a sort of a color code on the back of them, in effect. So here, I think we probably found something. Let's have a look at what this looks like. Let's just drop into the map. Here we go. So behind there we go, a little office there that's sat behind there. It's 2,000 square feet, Class E offices. It's worth £520 a foot converted. Those 800 square feet then mean it's worth about £1 million once it's built. Got a conversion cost there. Shouldn't cost us too much to convert that little building there. Thanks very much. £115 a foot. So on 30 seconds at the moment. Purchase price is saying £11 a foot is the rental level. 6% yield means it's 340 grand for the property. So I've bought it for 340, 350, something like that. Spent 200 on it, and I've got a 425 grand profit on it. For the back of that, 76% return on cost. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm kind of okay. I think what have we got there? We're under a minute, that's for sure. Anyway, so I started waffling at about 20 seconds. So so I think I'm pretty happy we've got a property there. What I can then do is I can then start looking at off-market letter campaigning and stuff. So I can save that property to a thing called Workflow, where I kind of manage my sites and I send my letters out and this sort of stuff. Kind of really neat and easy ways of doing all of that. But I suppose the interesting thing then is sort of saying, well, who are the people that own this particular property? These people here, so Chamberlain Bexley Limited, are a company that bought this property back in 2003. So they've owned the best part of 20 years now. What I can see up here is this is the company themselves. So they are Parker House is where they're based in Bexley. So they're kind of a local company, live near Bexley, well, trading address near Bexley, and they own this property around the corner from the station. They're actually they're actually a property company. So they're not a development company, but they're a property company. So they should understand what an office is worth in Bexley, but they probably aren't people that are going to go and buy stuff and convert them into something else. We can perhaps go and check that in a moment. The people behind that business are these people. So John Chamberlain, Nicola Chamberlain, she's retired actually, and there's kind of some other people below this. There's one person there that's running that. They were born in 1969, so maths correct, they're sort of 52 years old, something like that, I think. So probably not sort of at that point of being aging direct where they might want to sell something, but certainly kind of interesting to sort of see what that kind of that interest might be from them. We've got some details then about their accounts. So I kind of got a figure of about 400 grand in my head for this, and interesting to see what's in the property portfolio. So they've got £1 million worth of assets on their balance sheet, in effect, for the freehold investment properties under this particular company. what might be interesting, just go and see what else they've got. So see what other properties. So they own sort of property down here and a property up there. So that £1 million property portfolio they're talking about, which they've got in their accounts is worth £1 million, it's actually split across 2 properties. So if I'm going to sort of make an offer of 400,000 for this property or something like that, then that feels like it might well be the right kind of number, given they've got some other stuff just up here and this sort of stuff. And I might just put that into Excel for a minute, because what would be interesting to see is, are they buying anything at the moment? Are they busy sort of snapping up loads of properties? Doesn't look like it, but we'll just kind of just formally check that. So I just use the export here, just to go and see, well, actually, what have they bought and when, basically. So they've actually bought a couple of properties in 2003 and then one in 2017, but nothing else. So that they've bought 1 property in the last 20 years. That one was this property here, which I suspect is the one up the road in effect. So nothing particularly interesting, nothing kind of particularly active. They're not kind of busily buying stuff and have sort of a history of buying something every year. It's kind of a pretty old school kind of thing. They're just holding a couple of properties in effect in that particular company. Chance of them understanding what Class MA is, chance of them perhaps even understanding whether office is now part of Class E rather than office itself, question mark. So it's perhaps some interesting things around all of that. I suppose the other thing that is perhaps interesting then is just saying, well, actually, if we're looking at that particular property, so all these things that are shown on the map, these are all kind of opportunities, these are all kind of returns on costs shown in the map in effect, the warmer the colour, the kind of the higher the opportunity in effect. But of course, if we're looking at offices, one of the things we have to go and do is go and talk to the owners about what that's worth, and start to bring them on a journey with us. And kind of part of the reason for that is we sort of talk a lot about the benefits of buying stuff off market rather than on market. And actually, sort of some recent surveys we've run, sort of only about 10% of people actually buying stuff on the market. The balance are then going off market, and sort of half and half are going either off market through friendly agents, and the other half going off market by generating their own letters and sort of really driving that truly off market opportunity in effect. But in essence, the next job's going to be kind of what's this worth? What's the right price? How do I prove to this owner that the right value for this building really is about 340 grand? But actually, if I've got a 75% return on cost, I could pay quite a lot more than that. I could probably pay more like 600,000-700,000 for that building, and still perhaps 600,000 or 550 maybe I could perhaps pay for that, because I've got a 200 grand profit out of it. Sorry, 200 grand worth of conversion cost to pay. I'm still going to get a 25% return on cost, even if I pay sort of 550 for it, something like that. So how do I prove to the owner that the value really is about 400? But if you come on a journey with me, I can make it worth 550, and we'll share that 150 grand upside, 50-50 or something like that, or perhaps pay you 20% of it or 30% of it. We'll kind of negotiate about what that might be. But if you come on that journey and you give me 6 months to go and get my Class MA, PD rights all kind of documented and sorted out as part of this, then I'll share that upside with you. That's the reason why they'll do it with you, why they'll take longer, while they'll give you an option agreement, while they'll give you a subject to planning deal and this sort of stuff, is because you're going to give them a bit of the upside that you're going to bring to the table as part of this. And of course, the cost you're putting in is your planning applications. You'd have that back first before you start talking about profit splits. So the simple way to do that is there's kind of 2 things. One is to run a set of commercial comparables, what other commercial buildings have sold across this area, and understand that. Would be kind of quite a quick way of doing things. But one of the things that I really like is using, for me, that on-market information the way it really should be used, which is to look at it for comparables. And so with NIMS, what we have is this sort of commercial comparables overlay here. So I'm just going to sort of switch that off and just zoom out a little bit and just sort of see sort of not a lot actually going on in Bexley at the moment. So I can't seem to find anything going on here. Actually, this is strange. I'm going to show you the commercial comparables, but actually it's switched off for some reason. That's weird. Yes, for some reason they've been switched off. But in essence, what we've then got is we've got sort of a few little bits and pieces that are on the market here. So in fact, there's perhaps a commercial conversion just sat there sort of separately actually. But let's just sort of zoom out. See if we can just find so here's some retail units down here that are to let. This would at least give me access to a local agent that would perhaps understand this little local marketplace. I can't find any offices on the market across Bexley, which is bizarre, really, because you'd think there was some, but clearly there aren't any there, I suspect, and therefore this one particular office that we found is going to be quite tricky to understand in effect. But there are some offices to let, not too far away. We're just up in sort of Bexley Heath instead, and so here we've got a property on the market. It's 2,200 square feet to let with Humberston and Hawkins. And I can go and click and see the details of that property, he says. Like we've got that's not taking where I expect it to. Let's go and just have a look and see if we've got something different up here somewhere. Let's go and see if something like that. But again, that looks like, there we go. So there's one there that's showing us a little office space there that we can kind of then understand, well, how big is that? What's the quoting price for that? And just understand kind of what's the ballpark figures for quoting stuff that's on the market to let and for sale. So we can just bring together that schedule of comparable evidence to understand exactly what what these buildings are worth in effect. So you just see down here, there's kind of 300 square feet or so that is on the market, and there's presumably a quoting price. You can download the brochure to go and understand exactly what those prices were in effect. So quite quickly, what hopefully you can see is that we can take in many ways, a sort of a small location where there isn't huge amounts of commercial space there, and what commercial space there that is there probably isn't particularly viable in many ways. You can sort of see across the high street this sort of, when I switched the Class MA on, there was plenty of other opportunities up and down that little high street in effect. Let me kind of explain what I'm trying to get across here. You can sort of see along here that a lot of the properties that are there have opportunity to convert in effect. So kind of, I wouldn't usually expect to see so much of that in a little high street. I'd expect to see less of that in effect. And so what it's showing is there's not a huge amount going on in that sort of central Bexley location in effect. And then when you then sort of bring on the comparables or the commercial availability, you can see, well, none of it's on the market. There isn't really a marketplace for office space around here. And yet what we've got here is we've got an office sat right there, frankly, a bit close to the train station. Maybe I haven't picked the best one as a commercial conversion. You see how quick and easy that is to go and find that opportunity. Then you can understand the people behind it, understand what they've got there in their accounts, and understand then just how we're going to try and unlock that particular opportunity, and understand the stuff that's sold nearby and the stuff that's on the market to make all of that clear. Does that all make sense? So hopefully, Lloyd, I found my site in under 60 seconds anyway. I said 90. So we've got it in under 60. Does that kind of all make sense?
Yeah, it's gone.
Are there any kind of questions in the chat? Let's the other thing that sort of I'm very tempted by is just have a little go at Class ZA, because that's the thing that we sort of talked about today. In effect, that other one comes back actually on the Class ZA as well. So the Class ZA, what that does, let me get rid of the commercial availability in effect. So what the Class ZA overlay does, so that, as Lloyd said, has a maximum size of 1,000 square meters on the ground floor, so 10,000 square feet on each floor in effect. You have kind of a three-story office building on 10,000 feet each. So it can be a sort of 30,000 square foot office building. You then knock down and put 2 stories of flats on top. What this is doing is looking for those buildings that are in the use classes that sit alongside that. So it's the old B1 uses that form part of Class ZA. So it's the old industrial buildings, the offices, the research and development buildings in effect. We've applied a sort of a height filter. We've removed things like listed buildings and this sort of stuff. So what you then find is that it sort of brings back those sorts of buildings then. And actually as part of this is one other thing that it does, which is it overlays, so it uses our algorithms to kind of overlay a sort of residential feel to a location. So we're not fans of the idea of building something in the middle of an office park. When you've got offices all around it, there's this kind of concept of, well, you could do that, but should you do it? It's a really sort of big question that you should be sort of asking yourselves in effect. And so it sort of brings this sort of stuff back. It's kind of one of the things that historically have been very interesting with this sort of stuff is those little kind of car garages tucked behind the back of the chimney pots in effect, kind of behind the frontages, kind of bring all those things back. Something down here kind of looks interesting as well, a little store that's down there as well, which kind of that does look interesting, doesn't it? So surrounded by residential properties as well. It's kind of really quite interesting, that little sort of 800 square foot store that's kind of got very low values that the system's sort of saying you can make £1.5 million out of that kind of really, really quickly. So that's the idea of you knock it down and rebuild it with flats with 2 stories on top in effect. I don't know if I can get down the back there to go and have a look at that, because that does look quite interesting, doesn't it? Not the finest of access ways down, is it? I'm not sure particularly like that too much, but there's a little store down there that could sort of hold a block of flats if you get this tidied up, maybe, I don't know. So So kind of easy ways to find both of those. Once you've found something, you save it into a thing called workflow. That actually pulls a load of ownership information into it as well, so that you can, in effect, take each of your stages, download them into Excel, and then just mail campaign with the owner's details all nice and neatly laid out with kind of owner's name and address line 1, 2, 3, and that sort of stuff. So you can then just do a very quick mail merge, or kind of use something like doc mail or UK mail or stamp or something like that to just send lots and lots of letters out in order to drive some interested owners at you that you can then apply these PD rights to, frankly. So hopefully, I feel like I've talked for long enough, Lloyd. I feel like we've hopefully kind of found two sites, I suppose, kind of reasonably quickly, reasonably easily, and hopefully sort of shown how we can start to get into that assessment phase, understanding how we might sort of look at some values. I suppose the one thing I haven't necessarily shown is just, I think some of the
there's
sorry, Lloyd. Yeah,
there's one building specifically I want to show in Northampton, which is one that you can see quite clearly what you can do with it. And it's just for example. So if you can just put Northampton in for me.
Yeah.
And I'll show you ways of actually working out manually. If you find a building, okay, can you do it? If you go to the bottom left, you can see kind of just a few sort of, well, you see this train station. If you move the screen up bottom left, and then we got sort of the St James MOT Centre, in fact Halfords Auto Centre. If you can zoom into that part for me.
Is that near here, is it?
Yeah, to the top of the screen now. So you've got, I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen because you can't see me pointing, but but yeah, to the left of the train station, pretty much you've got these kind of purpose-built office blocks north now. North
of the train station up here.
Do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, sure. Go on. Yeah.
Let me do that. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Yeah, can you see that?
Yep.
So if I just zoom into Northampton.
Yep.
Put the satellite view on there. So this is kind of where we're based. It's this sort of area here. Now, I know this area well because that kind of square building there is our first ever project that we built, and that's 8 new build houses. Which, yeah. So if you look at this building next to it, if I just drop the man on the ground down here, you can see 3-story purpose-built block of flats. Okay, and that is pre-1989 construction, so it ticks that box as well. Okay, so it's not listed, nothing like that. So if I just sort of back out of here, just a manual check. If you drive past, I'll just go to the measuring tools, and I'll just sort of measure the building. I'm going to do it crudely and just sort of measure this building. All I'm checking here is the footprint 1,000 square meters or less. Okay. So it's a very, very crude way of doing it. But that tells me, kind of zooming in here, is 727 square meters. So that whole entire building, you can knock down, rebuild as it is, but add 2 stories on top. Okay, yeah, sure. If it was vacant. Okay, this isn't vacant. That's the only issue with this, but just kind of showing you, if you find a property that is, this is the kind of thing you're doing. In this area, like that is 750 square meters. If I divide that by 50, because that's kind of the smallest average of a 1-bed and 2-bed, that's 15 flats you can add per floor. And let's just assume you can do 2 extra floors. That's 30 flats in total, which the average value of a flat down there is probably top end 130. So 120, 130. So I'll times by £125,000 a flat. That's an extra £3.7 million worth of value on top of the building. It's not going to cost you that, plus the 3 stories below. So actually, times that by 15,000 times 125 is 15 times 125,000 per floor is 1.8 million, times that by 5, you're looking at nearly 10 million, 9.3 million pounds worth of value. And you don't need to go through full planning permission.
Totally. Well, the other thing you could do on that is the current rate is like Class A, I think it is. You can now you can take a 3-story purpose-built block of flats and put the 2 stories on top of them. So rather than knocking it down under ZA, you could perhaps try I can't say A or AA or something like that, where you've got you can then go up on the existing building as well. So that would save you kind of the cost of knocking down and rebuilding.
Absolutely.
And that kind of getting them out as well, mightn't it? Kind of could be.
That doesn't have to be vacant. They can be in use. So yeah, you're looking at timber frame above, as long as it's structurally sound and can take it. Yeah, you can certainly add 2 floors on top of that.
Absolutely. They're all over the place, aren't they? All over the place. Well, I've seen there's kind of quite a few comments in the chat. So I think what I'd like to do is suggest that we sort of move on to the next bit, really. So I suppose before we do that, before we move on to the live chat, let me just jump back into my slides and just share my screen again. For any of you that are interested in Nimbus, this is usually the journey people kind of take with us. So usually you will sign up with us, have a free trial with us, sort of 14 days or so, have a one-to-one demonstration with one of the team here, kind of help you understand how you use the system for what you're trying to get out of it. Often then people will sign up to the Elite platform, and then if they're interested, then they can upgrade into that Elite Plus system. That's a little add-ons that I was using, the little button that allowed me to see all the Class MA properties, all the ZA properties. If anyone would like to arrange a call with us to talk through that, I'll pop that link in the chat and I'll run a poll in a second as well. We do have something quite special on at the moment, which is for those of you that are on Elite or that buy the Elite system on a 12-month subscription with us, you can upgrade into the Elite Plus system for £600 for the year in effect. And what we'll give you, it's quite remarkable actually, we'll give you a 90-day money-back guarantee. So if you don't find a site that's suitable and viable within 90 days, bearing in mind I did it in 60 seconds, and there wasn't a lot of science to where I did it. I kind of clicked the button, then clicked another one, and that kind of then helped me find the site. Then if you're interested in that, we'll actually give you a 90-day money-back guarantee. You've got to, there's some T's and C's apply. You've got to do your bit. You've got to kind of learn how to use the system and go and actually use it and send some letters. But if provided you do that, then there's a 90-day money-back guarantee, provided you sign up with us today in effect. So that's what we're going to offer. I'm going to just jump in and get some links for you and put those in the chat and launch a poll. Lloyd, you guys, so how can you guys help as well?
Yeah, so I'll sort of briefly touch on the Commercial Conversion Accelerator. If you want to sort of go through step by step on how to learn, we do have an online course, which is the CCA, the Commercial Conversion Accelerator, which goes through step by step whether you sort of want to do deals. So there's 8 modules currently. They are being upgraded at the moment, so you will get those up-to-date versions as well, which is all the MA, ZA, all the new permitted development rights, because it's new. Okay, so we're keeping it up to date, and as the new as things change in the future, you'll also get that upgrade as well, or the addition. So we've got module 1 is about just the overview of what the opportunities are. I touched very, very slightly today. Number 2 is going into the detail of permitted development, and we go into the detail with our planning consultant, John McDermott, who's a good friend of Nimbus as well. And he'll go through the permitted development rights and what it is and how you can go about doing them as well. Then we talk about build costs, which is obviously something that a lot of people want to know and understand about. So even if you want to understand build costs, it's a great module just to sort of go through and find out about build costs as well. Then we talk about analyzing deals. So how do you make a deal work? How do you stack up a deal? How do you know it's going to work? And go through the details of that as well. Then we look at funding the conversion, so how you can get development finance, how you can get it 100% paid for by a lender, and we'll go through that as well. And then on site, the conversion process, actually with our project manager teaching you how to set up a program of work, how to sort of look at the build program, the warranties, the building regs needed, and the building control required as well. And then tax strategies, there are some benefits to doing commercial conversions over new build. So you can not pay VAT on a purchase of a building if you're converting it into residential. And we'll talk about different ways to utilize the best tax strategies to help you there as well. And then the exit strategies at the end. So pretty much from finding sites all the way to finishing the deal is on the Commercial Conversion Accelerator. And it's actually, I've set it up so we teach you a module and actually give you homework to go away and do, including going down and walking down your high street and finding some opportunities there as well. So learning and do it at the same time. So that, if you're interested, there is a little link on there. So if you go to bit.ly/the CCA 2021, we'll give you that as well. So included, if anyone wants to do this, we will do a live site visit around that Mill Road factory conversion. So £3.6 million Mill Road conversion, 24 apartments. Paul, I think you said you wanted to come along as well.
Yeah, I find those really interesting actually, when you sort of do your sort of when you go and look at a building that's going through that, there's lots of things that are very useful to understand. Kind of one of the things I always talk about is having a good design team that kind of really understand the kind of buildings that you're trying to build and the things you're trying to do, because actually they've got their mind in that mindset of, well, how do I deal with, drainage is going to be an issue. How do I get the water out of these? How do I get it through there? So stuff I can use as their asbestos issues, kind of all of that sort of stuff that if you're doing commercial conversions, a decent design team is kind of really useful for. And actually, when you go around those buildings, you can kind of see, and hopefully Lloyd will kind of point at, well, had a problem here and a problem there, and there was this crack in the back wall, and we did this, and there was kind of, that's the kind of stuff that I think is really invaluable when it comes to this sort of stuff, and you can go around and see it all.
Yeah.
So
and it's a great time at the moment to do it. So just to give you an idea of where we are with it, the show home is almost complete, but the floors above haven't even been started yet. So you've got kind of almost complete ready-made properties, and then you go above and you've got some sort of conversions happening as well. So you see the bare brick, you see everything. Elena asked the question, is the price for today only, or will it be available later? That's the price. The only benefit and bonus is the live site visits. We can only have a few numbers. So anyone that sort of purchases today, before the end of the day, I'm not saying right now, but before the end of the day, anyone that purchases will get the live site visit as well. And we'll walk around, myself, Andy, Paul, you're more welcome to attend that as well and have a look. But it's a good, we actually took the roof off, put a new roof on. It's a real good conversion. So yeah, you'll see a lot within that as well.
Fabulous. So we've got a quick poll here. I'm just going to launch that now. So if you'd like a follow-up from Nimbus to run through kind of where you're on your journey, talk through any of the options you've currently got, and that first question's for you. And equally, if you'd like the team at Whitebox to get in touch with you and talk to you about the commercial conversion, or anything else that they're doing as well, then that second question is there for you. Fabulous. I'm going to leave that poll just running for a moment so we can give everybody a chance just to answer those couple of questions for us. And the next job then will be, I'll just give that a moment, let's give that a minute or so. And for those of you who have answered the poll and are kind of ready for the next bit, then what we're going to be doing is doing a live Q&A right now. So what I'd like to do is to go into into your control panel. In the control panel, what you should find is there's a raise hand button. So if you'd like to ask a question of myself or Lloyd, or indeed both of us, then if you can pop your hand up, we will come around and answer those questions. We'll get you to unmute yourself from the system, and we'll then bring you up here. We'll have a chat, and we'll see if we can answer your question for you. Fabulous. Right, I'm going to end that poll now. That's been running for long enough. So I think Steve was the first one. So I'm going to stop my screen share. Let's see if we can ask Steve to talk. Just trying to unmute you there, Steve. Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Hello.
Fabulous. How are you doing?
Good. Nice to see you. Fantastic and professional. Thanks, guys. It was my Bexley inquiry.
Oh, very good.
And your 10-yard lane example, my questions, I put them into the chat, was to do with, I kind of know that location, and my question was, does Nimbus offer access? Because I think that 10-yard lane, the one you put up there, great, I love the location. But I'm questioning, can you get in? So I'm thinking of...
Oh, no, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. Well, let's just see.
Because you got a street view thing, haven't you?
Did I fail?
No, I don't think that.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look. I hope not. Let's have a look. Let's go and recreate this.
It's tucked. Where are you? So left of there.
There's Bexley there. There we go.
Okay.
So we were in here, weren't we? So the question you've got is there access through here? So this is
so where the it's gone now. Right. So smack in the middle of the screen. There it is. Yeah.
So I think we're okay actually. So Tanyard Lane is a jolly good question whether you can get across that. So that bit there is owned by G&O Investments. What's interesting though is that the title for the two, so when I ran the company search, it actually showed this property and in fact that title there are both owned by the same, well, you can see they're both owned by Chamberlain Bexley. So I suppose down here you've got the unregistered station.
Sorry.
I think you're not getting access down there.
No, but that's sorry. Can I jump over you? Where you flickering on the station bit, that is like 40 foot higher in the air.
Is it? Right, okay.
That's way higher. So Tanyard Lane is a narrow alleyway between some shops. Bexley Village, just to go back to give you some local knowledge, Bexley Village, the reason you weren't finding much is it's a real cute little village, loads of little shops and coffee bars and stuff like that. Where have you gone now? I'm not sure where you okay. I got you.
Swinging around the building.
So that the road at the top of your image now is higher, much higher up. Oh, good. Okay, so it's down there, so where you are, see the fence, and it's down there, So it's much lower. So if you go down that road there, out to the high street.
No. So you've then got down there. You've got the down here. You've got your sideway down there. Saying, isn't it?
Yeah. So the approach to this plot. So there it is there in that gap by the pub.
Yeah, down there.
Up there. So it's much lower, but it's a bit tight. So I'm an ex-fireman, so I'm thinking, how am I going to get? You can't get a fire engine down there. You can't build down there. But
I don't think it's quite as bad as that, actually.
Okay, so no problem. That was my question. I put it in the chat earlier. Does Nimbus show it's capable of getting access, therefore a development opportunity? Because that's a great. I'll go and get that. That'd be my first one.
Yeah, it's very close. So usually I can't remember what the size is for a private drive, but usually it's about sort of 4 meters, I think. Lloyd, I can't remember whether
there's quite a bit of commercial down there, though, isn't there? Yeah.
So it depends on the number of houses down there. But if it's only one,
it's no houses down there really. There's maybe one, but there's like little private garage workshop type stuff. But the beauty of what you're promoting, the permitted development, is they can't stop you, and we haven't got to wait 10 years to go through council planning. But that's a cracker. I live around the corner from here, by the way. That's mine.
Yeah, totally. Well,
this is me joining the club.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Well, I think the answer to that is that I guess some planning advice is my sort of the first thing. But you have got sort of through here, some sort of access. This bit here, you probably want to be, so if you want to come down through that, I mean, you've got an existing access anyway, presumably, so you're probably using that anyway. So it'd be interesting to see what access rights you've got and how the existing title, again, buy a copy of the title, get with the measuring tools would be helpful. Buy a copy of that title itself. It will tell you whether you've got rights across that. So you can just kind of click on register there to go and understand that. That will tell you kind of how they use an existing title. If they're not used, if they haven't got rights to use the building, haven't got access across that piece of land, then they've got problems anyway, quite frankly. So
Paul, are you saying that this turquoisey looking bit, you're saying it fits in with the strategy, but it's not necessarily for sale yet?
No, yeah. So in effect, what the strategy does is it identifies where the opportunity.
You guys are genius. This is genius. I can't believe it.
So it picks out that the building should comply with is kind of policy compliant to get it to change of use to residential, and then the trick then to finding out whether it's off market or not is to ask the owner whether they're prepared to sell it.
That bit I can do. It's the search in the streets I didn't want to do. But I know in that yard there is something residential. I don't know which one it is because I've seen it for sale before. But that little plot you got there.
So on this, it's saying there's no residential on this bit.
No, it's not there. No.
Nothing on that. I don't know. This looks all commercial to me, but
is it the one above? Is it the one above where you go up? That one, go up a bit, up
up
and to your right, up and to your right.
Some resi on it, yeah.
Well, that's the back of the shop. That's the back of the shop. No, up and to your right.
Yeah, just in here.
That one, is that resi?
Yes, it's got 6 flats in it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's okay. Well, that's got access, so that works. That's perfect. Because the ones on the front, that's all little shops. And they're all Victorian
I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to sit and chat about this for hours. If not,
yeah, sorry, I go. Thank you so much. You are a genius. I've got to tell you, I love it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I wanted to check that I had actually achieved my goal of finding a site in 60 seconds. I was like, have I found a site with access issues in 60 seconds? Well, I
shall go and woo Mr. Chamberlain.
Fabulous. Thank you, Steve. Is that okay?
Thank you. No, thank you, guys. And you. Sorry, I've forgotten your name over there. Interesting point. Your chair, yes, you saluting. Your chair makes you look like you've got a big afro haircut.
Yeah, see that.
You should have seen him in lockdown.
Thank you. Leave you to it. Wonderful.
Fabulous.
I'm still watching. Go.
Cheers. And then Yogesh was next. Let's see if we can get Yogesh up. Hi, Yogesh.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Lloyd. Great talk again. Hey. Thank you. Hi, Lloyd. I've got questions for one each for both of you. That's all right. I'll do you, Paul, first. My question is, does Nimbus help you filter planning applications by class? So if I want a list of all the Class M or all the Class Gs, all the Class Os being done the last year, do you have that filtering ability yet?
Yeah, totally. So what you can do is kind of, so you could use the planning export for that. So the planning export allows you to, it kind of does quite a few things actually. It's in the process of being broken up into various pieces because it does an awful lot of stuff in one place. But in essence, you can do a search for the word Class O, Class M, Class MA, Class G, all that kind of stuff. And that will then go and search across council's websites for any planning applications that have gone in for that. What's really interesting with that then, kind of the reason why I sort of say, well, it's doing a whole bunch of stuff and therefore needs sort of splitting up in effect, is that when you do that, what it will do is it will link that through to the owner's details, and it will say, so in effect, then you can filter that file to say, well, this is stuff that's been bought recently and these PD rights have been applied to them, which means that then you've got a list of locally active developers that are then in effect buying stuff and applying these PD rights to go and convert them to residential, of course. So they're kind of interesting in their own right, because if you want to go and raise funding for a site you found a whole lot of sites through, I don't know, one of our strategies, something like that, and then you want to go and raise some funding for the stuff because actually you found more than you got the money to buy, then of course they're quite interesting for that because they'll kind of understand it, they'll understand the planning route, they'll be prepared to kind of do some sort of deal with you to kind of support and fund your deals, a bit like Lloyd's done with some of his students and stuff. So similar sort of thing, he kind of understands the schemes being put forward, understands kind of how it all works, and therefore is prepared to back those kind of things. So that's kind of interesting. And then the final piece on the end of it then says, well, actually, for those properties that were bought by these developers that had these PD rights applied to them, these were the architects they used, and these were the planners they used. And therefore, you can then get a nice, neat understanding of, well, who are the right people off the back of that. So my answer is yes, you can. I'd go into the planning export. I would use whichever kind of particular set of PD rights you're interested in. I would do, Class M, Class G, Class O, whatever it is you want to put on, Class ZA, Class MA, all those sorts of things. I'd put those sort of keywords into it, do an export across the councils you're interested in, and then that will then give you a list of all of those things where they're kind of pending or where they're kind of, how they're getting on and this sort of stuff. I guess it could be interesting to see the kind of supporting documents they're putting in. So kind of how are those planning applications progressing across your council, and understand all of that. So that makes it feels like a very long answer. Yes, use planning export.
That's exactly what I was asking. Maybe I want the local architects who've got experience in these classes and get a list of them, get the list of the ones that do it most. So that's wonderful if you've got that. That's worth paying for on its own, I think. And a question for Lloyd, quick one. Can you still do PD for takeaways, betting shops, payday loans, and pubs? Is there still a PD for those?
So it's the used class. So the laundrettes, betting shops, payday loans are all sui generis used class. So you can't on them. You can on takeaways now. You can on cafes, restaurants. You can on dry cleaners, but not laundrettes. So it's a kind of it's a weird thing. But in the in the chat room, I put the downloadable link to that PDF that I did. So they're all listed in there if you have a look.
Okay, that's quite confusing. Is it because they're not Class C? That's why, isn't it? Because they're not Class C.
Yeah.
So a laundrette's not Class C. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But
and the dry cleaners not Class C.
Yeah. So you can wash your clothes, but you can't dry them.
That's so weird. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate it. Nice to see you both.
Right, we have Nick left next. Let's see if we can get Nick up. Let's ask you. Oh, hi Nick, how you doing? Can't hear you, Nick. I think you're unmuted. Can't hear you, I'm afraid. Let's get Mohammed up just while Nick sorts his stuff out. See if we can get Mohammed to unmute himself.
Hello.
Hey Mohammed, how you doing?
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yeah, loud and clear. How you doing?
Okay, cool. So, yeah, not too bad. So I'm going to be honest. The question that I've got is a little bit off topic, I think, but I'm hoping that you can still answer. So I'm interested in looking at developing some smaller plots with maybe like a couple of garages on them, or maybe they're just like a car park. And obviously, a way to sort of mitigate risk would be to try and negotiate some sort of option agreement subject to successful planning. Now, I understand that you're supposed to sort of incentivize the current owners by maybe offering them a bit more than market value in case that you do end up buying it. However, what I can't wrap my head around is if, due to a unsuccessful planning app, then obviously the value of their property would go down, right? So how would you reconcile that? How would you then sort of answer that with the owners?
Just if I can, the way we do it is we've never done an option agreement because we don't need to. The way we do it is a subject to planning offer. So you would sort of offer with successful planning the price you'd pay with planning. So that's how to sort of negotiate with that, if that makes sense. So it's just subject to planning offer.
And the price shouldn't really go down. If you don't get planning for it, then does that affect value? Not really. If you're buying a house with a side garden, you can't get planning on it because it's been turned down. I don't think that's really going to affect the value. And anyway, it's really the landowner's problem rather than your problem. Your problem is that you've spent the money getting the planning, because trying to get the planning and not be able to get there. And so we're doing your due diligence up front to make sure you've got a nice, strong pre-app and a good planner behind you. Probably, Lloyd, is probably the answer, isn't it?
Yeah, so the other thing for the planning consultant is key. But the other thing to know is that refused planning isn't bad, because you only have to satisfy the refusal, because you get another go. Basically, you get free go to put another application in. As long as you can satisfy just the reasons for refusal, you should get planning permission.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's
cool.
part of your timing on your option, because often you need to kind of be able to extend your option to make sure you can cover the application and an appeal afterwards if you need to, or a resubmission if you need to. So,
yeah.
Okay, cool. So I guess it's more of just you're paying for what you need to pay, and you shouldn't really sort of dwell too much on any sort of loss of value. Okay, cool, fine. All right, that makes sense.
Thank you, Mohammed. Lovely. Right, so let's see if we can got a few more still to go. Is that Nick? You there, Nick?
It is. Hi, yeah. Can you both hear me now?
We can now, yeah. How you doing?
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and apologies about before. Yeah, I use Nimbus Maps, and I currently use the residential to HMO strategy, and I think it's a great system. I am now thinking about obviously adding the Class MA to that, hence why I'm on the Zoom call. My main thing for myself was and I did put in the chat as well, is there, I know you mentioned just slightly that we can generate letter templates so we can send it out directly to the vendor. Is there any kind of training on that, or can you kind of just give us an example as to how we can do that?
Yeah, sure. So it's using the workflow. It's the download button in the workflow. If you're writing to private owners, then in effect you've got a choice. You can do a dear homeowner letter, and in essence, the workflow export will give you the address of the property. You just do a dear homeowner, then you put the address of the property, and you write your letters off the back of that. If you write it to companies, it will put the company's details into the export for you, and it's kind of, then you can write, whatever it is. In the case of this, Neville Investments Trust Limited, or whatever it is that own the particular property in effect, and then the company address and this sort of stuff. If you're writing to private owners and you want to write to them, Mr. and Mrs. Smith or whatever, then if you buy a title register through Nimbus, then that will then give you the owner's details and their address. It'll sort of extract it off the title register in effect.
Yeah. But on
so
the workflow system, how do you generate the letter? Is there a button on there?
So at the moment, what you do is you then load that, you use that into something like Stamp or DocMail or UK Mail with your letter template, and that would then send the letter out. If you kind of watch this space for the next sort of 3 or 4 months, I think you'll find that we'll release that as a tool that would be quite useful, I think, in that whole kind of workflow piece, actually.
Yeah. But, okay. Awesome. Thank you, guys. And yeah, awesome. Cheers.
Thank you, Nick. All right. Let's see if we can get Cameron up. Let's see if we can get you to talk, Cameron.
Hi.
Hi, Cameron.
Paul and Lloyd, for the presentation. Yeah, my question was, Lloyd presented something he'd been looking at in his area. I was wondering if you could overlay the ZA map on Nimbus for that specific deal to see whether it flagged up as something which is potential for a ZA.
Yeah, I think you'll find it will crop up as the class MA, actually. Let's see if we can.
I think that's what you were talking about, wasn't it, Lloyd? That it's possible to do.
Yeah, I don't think it will, because if you click on that title, it's actually one whole title, so it won't specifically pick up that one property.
This is kind of my question. So I love the software and stuff that you've done with it, but I want to know, like, it's quite a tough question, but like for me, I haven't started any of this yet, so I haven't started doing MA rights, but I want to follow the path of least resistance, if you know what I mean. So that to me would be sat here looking in my area, finding these deals and then emailing or sending letters out. But how many deals are then sat on the table in these meetings you're talking about, you know, going to businesses, them shutting down, etc., etc. You know, in your experience, Lloyd, how many deals are being found using Nimbus maps? And I know it's difficult because obviously you've got a good relationship and stuff, but I just want to know, like, the honest result.
No, it's rubbish, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know it's not rubbish and you're going the right way about it, but I'm saying how many deals then are in the midpoint between the software and these business meetings you go to and you find them cracking deals.
It's a case of, for us, it's a case of looking all over the place. So Nimbus is a way of finding deals. But it is, as you say, the path of least resistance a lot of the time. Like, this is new, and Paul hasn't paid me to say this or anything, but what Nimbus is great at is putting all the new legislation into an algorithm that creates a load of properties for you that just picks out a load of sites to go and look at. Now, not all of those are going to be deals, because someone might not want to sell, and some of them might not be the ones that you want to build. So it's just a way of just highlighting a load first. Obviously, we teach different ways of talking to people. Obviously, Nimbus doesn't allow you to talk to people. You've got to do that. So the more work you can put in, the more deals you're going to get. We have had a lot of people find deals because of the way Nimbus help identify sites and go through a planning process as well. So what you've seen is just a snippet of what Nimbus can do, because you can go into the planning portals, you can look at previous planning. It does a lot more, which, if anyone hasn't got it, I would recommend the trial version. You can just see what it does. But to answer your question, Nimbus is just a way of finding a lot of deals. So you just got to put the effort in. The more effort you put in, the more likely you're going to find a deal.
Yeah, it's a tool as such.
Yeah, and we use it. Like, we use it to find deals. So yeah, if we use it, other people should use it as well.
Perfect.
That's good, Christian, Cameron. No. Yeah, cool, brilliant. Thank you both. See if we can get. We could perhaps just sort of feel like we could go on all afternoon, which is fine for me, but I'm conscious Lloyd's got an important appointment in a minute. So we'll let's just see if we can get Gareth on. I think Gareth was next. Let's see if I can get you to unmute yourself, Gareth.
Yep, can you hear me?
Hi, Gareth. Yeah, how you doing?
Hello. Yeah, very, very, very interested. Just two things really in the same sort of question. The previous example you gave about finding a property and the access, will Nimbus allow you to tell you how you can find out the access, or do you have to literally go onto the title deeds?
Yeah, so usually it's pretty straightforward actually, because usually it's the button public highway, and you can, I suppose for speed, because I only got 90 seconds to find something. I didn't perhaps go through the full demonstration of the system, because usually what you do is you go and search an area and it'll plot all the ownership boundaries in a certain area, and you can kind of quite quickly see, well, does this site abut the highway or not? Is it, because there's kind of usually the highway isn't adopted, it's kind of, sorry, the highway is adopted, but it's not usually registered. So you sort of see this kind of gap where there's kind of the road, and it's sort of, then you see these all these sort of properties that are all these titles that are sort of plotted all around it and stuff. So usually most properties abut the public highway, and therefore it's kind of quite simple. In the case of that, actually the road, which I hadn't realized when I saw it, was actually part of the train station. So it was then, well, is the train station, is that adopted? Is the road into the train station adopted, or is it not adopted? Or is it the side road? And of course there was a levels issue with the side road, with the train station as well. So I think just because the one that I chose, it's kind of a little bit tricky. Usually it's not a particularly difficult thing to do. And then what you can then do is just, if you click search here, it'll plot all the other ownership around it. It's very clear then whether there's a little slither of land that's owned by XYZ development, something that just sits in front of your property, in which case then you've got an access issue. But of course, these buildings are conversions, so it's not the same as building new build stuff, if you like, although kind of it is kind of new build properties once it's built, obviously. But in essence, they've got existing accesses, they've got existing buildings that are being or have been used, and therefore that access issue shouldn't be much of a problem, frankly, in the majority of cases, because quite simply you're just reusing existing access to go in and convert the building itself, or in the case of ZA, knock it down and rebuild it and make it bigger in effect. So I think that may be part of the demonstration, the particular building that I just chose. So I didn't necessarily want a retail unit and doing shop stuff, so I wanted to do something slightly different today in effect. So
no, that was a good example, actually, a very good example, and very impressive that you did it under a minute. The second part of the question is, I know Nimbus Maps does floodplain areas and TPOs. Does it, and is there, this is a question for both of you really, is there such a thing called a Japanese knotweed map or anything like that?
There's such thing as Japanese knotweed scar, I think, but I'm not sure whether there's, we had that on our first development, a whole bunch of knotweed. The answer is no, there isn't a central portal. That's certainly not what we found that shows Japanese knotweed, unfortunately. Lloyd, are you aware of any of that?
No, it spreads like wildfire, so it's difficult to pinpoint.
Yeah, because I know that example you showed there, it grows quite waterways and rail lines.
Yeah, so railways is a key point, because the railways actually put Japanese knotweed on the banks on purpose to stop other things growing. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I was just curious on that one.
Yeah, so that's a point for everyone else. If you find a site near a railway station, it's certainly a checkpoint to look at. Does it have Japanese knotweed? Because it's not always a bad thing though, because under land remediation relief, you can get 150% tax relief. There's a little nugget for you.
Yeah,
you can. It's just expensive to remove, isn't it? It's you can't go down with your strimmer and chuck it over the fence. It doesn't go down well. So fabulous.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. That was great.
Brilliant. We'll perhaps just do one more, Lloyd, if that's okay. One more, and then we'll. Let's get Irina. Hi, Irina. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hello, Paul. Hi, Lloyd.
Hello.
How you doing?
Yeah. Thank you for unmuting me, Paul. I just had a question. How do you decide on what the plot is was allowed for you to pay for all the building? Because I remember you used a certain method before you demonstrated, like you used rates against 8% yield, but I don't want to confuse everybody on the call because sure. So what we've done is we found that was quite a confusing way of explaining things. So what we've done is we've sort of split it up and sort of created local calculations in effect that say we believe commercial properties typically, if I was going to appraise a converted building in a particular area, these are the kind of numbers we'd be using in effect. So we've got, at the moment, it's a sort of a hard-coded calculation that says, well, we think in London 5% is the going yield at the moment. We think outside, and so there's kind of
sort of a local level around that. And typically these buildings, if you're going to convert a building, it's usually a reasonably kind of secondary kind of building. It's usually not the sort of the primary grade A stuff that you're going to go and convert, because usually it's too good, doesn't really kind of stack up to do it, or the developer that built it recently would have done that with it in effect. So so on the new Class MA strategy, you'll see that there's a predicted rental level for it and a predicted yield that's being used to give you that kind of that early sort of steer of, roughly speaking, kind of how viable is this from a financial point of view to convert this building into residential in effect. So so that's the short answer, if that makes sense. And then there's kind of some strengthening of the tools around the commercial availability, the commercial comparables. So you can sort of see, well, these are the buildings here converting, so you can get yourself comfortable that sort of we've done the fag packet calculation, or the calculation on the back of the envelope. You can't call it fag packet anymore, apparently, but we've done the calculation on the back of the envelope to say, it's sort of in a reasonable world, what are the sales prices, what's the kind of area of this building, what's the predicted purchase price of that. And that kind of buildings are usually much more expensive in London than they are in the northwest, the northeast in effect. And so we've sort of applied a regional sort of change to those yields in effect to bring that through in effect. So that makes sense.
Yeah, then with ZA and MA overlays, you still don't get the rough guidance in terms of offer price. You need to kind of figure out yourself working backwards. Yeah.
Yes, the Class MA strategy.
I'll give you
sorry, like you go. Yeah.
Is it another and a website to go to is mypda.co.uk, which works out how much you should be paying for sites.
How is it? MyPD?
mypda.co.uk.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lloyd.
And you can actually import your
value calculation, won't it? Say kind of
so you can import your Nimbus workflow into that as well, so you can then start doing it quite easily.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, both of you.
Cool. Brilliant. Thank you. Lovely. Great. We've still got quite a few people with their hands up, but I think really, given that we've given ourselves an hour to run through this, and we're now quite a long way past an hour and a half, I think all that really remains for me to do is firstly, 2 seconds, let me just get my slides back up again. That's what I should be doing here. Is firstly, thank you, Lloyd, for today, for great presentation and for getting us all thinking. Happy to see you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
And then finally, thank you to all for watching. It's been lots of fun today. I've been Paul Davis. We've been Nimbus Maps. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. All the best. Bye for now.